All right, well, welcome to our panel discussion today. My name is John Golden and I am from Pipeliner CRM. I hope all of you can see my screen okay. If you just give me a hands up to say you can see my screen, that would be good. Just click the button there so you can show. Yeah, good. And the panelists, you can all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. All right. As I said, my name is John Golden from Pipeliner CRM, Instant Intelligence Visualized. You can find us at pipelinersales.com. We also have recently launched a new online magazine called SalesPOP, where we have a lot of people, influencers and experts in the industry, come and contribute blog posts, videos, their publications, etc. So that's salespop.pipelinersales.com. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Again, this is a brand new online magazine. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start the presentation here. And today's presentation is about how to find and recruit the best salespeople. Okay, so this is a topic that is one I'm sure has challenged everybody on the call at one time or another, because I know it has challenged me in the past. It seems to be that kind of eternal issue that people have. And when you talk to a business leader or a sales manager or somebody, in an organization, in HR, whatever, and you ask them, what's one of your number one challenges or issues, they will always say, hiring, finding, and recruiting the best salespeople. So today we have been fortunate to put together an expert panel of sales recruitment experts who are going to talk about and give you insights into how you can overcome this great challenge. So first, I'd like to introduce Jamie Crosby. So Jamie, if you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you for the pleasure of joining. I am Jamie Crosby. I started my company ProActivate 13 years ago, and we work with leaders of sales organizations to help protect and propel their revenue as it relates to talent. So helping to upgrade C players to A players, or grow and expand their teams, or just have a funnel of talent to protect their revenue in case a top performer were to unexpectedly leave or get promoted, and also offer sales training and development. And so with that being said, prior to starting my own company 13 years ago, I was Vice President of Sales at Career Builder and had 100 salespeople throughout the country, and also Vice President of Training and Development there. And then prior to that, I was in the traditional staffing industry for several years, leading both sales and operations, and just really saw a gap in the market for leaders of sales organizations in this regard as it relates to talent, and so created a really unique model at ProActivate to help fill in those gaps. Thank you for having me on this webinar.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jamie. And Craig Jones. Craig, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, John. My name is Craig Jones. I'm the managing partner of Performance Methods, and I spent the first 15 years of my career in sales and sales management in the technology industry. And I learned a lot about how to hire and how not to hire during that time. But about 16 or 17 years ago, I co-founded Performance Methods with Steve Anderson, and we are a sales performance consultancy, and we basically get asked three big questions from our customers. Do we have the right people? Do they have the right skills? And are they doing the right things? And so what we've done is basically built a consultancy to customize our programs so it fits the customer's business so that they can hire the right people, develop them, get the performance they need, and coach them, and then start that cycle again. So they perpetuate it and build a bench of leaders. So I'm excited to be here, John. I appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. And finally, Kim Cole. Kim, who I worked with a number of years ago, actually had the pleasure of being recruited by Kim to a fantastic job. So, Kim, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you very much, John. And Jamie and Craig, it's a pleasure to be on the panel with both of you. So the Sales Zone, I co-founded the Sales Zone with my business partner, Debbie Doak, 17 years ago. In fact, we'll celebrate our 17th anniversary next month. And we are pure play sales recruiting. Customer-facing, revenue-enhancing positions really are our sweet spot. So that can be account management, sales, marketing, business development, customer success. And we go all the way up to the CEO level. John, as you know, since I recruited you into a role as a CEO. Our customers, we tend to focus on very difficult to find salespeople and sales leaders in very tricky industries where there's a high degree of specificity around skills. So, for example, one of my clients has Salesforce where 30% of the salespeople have their PhDs in microbiology, microchemistry, or one of the hard sciences that relates to that. So that's what we focus on. And our customers come to us typically with 3 specific questions. How do we find really good salespeople? Where do we find really good salespeople? And we get a lot of pressure at the Sales Zone on what is our process. And so the questions that you put together for this panel interview are excellent, and I think will add a lot of value to the people who are participating on this. So very good to be here. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. So before we get into the questions, I'd just like to launch a quick poll for our attendees. If you could just spend a couple of seconds, give us an idea of who you are, okay? Just click on and let us know who you are. That way we can get a better idea of the audience. Okay, so we just keep it open a little more just so we see if we can get as many people as possible here to answer this question, what your role is. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now and share the results quickly. Good, so we have about half of the people here are executive level, then sales leader, sales operations, etc. Okay, so that's good. So this is an excellent cross-section that we see here. Okay, let's return to the slideshow now, and let's get into the first question. So, let's ask a really basic, fundamental, obvious question to set us up for this discussion today. Why is it so hard to recruit good salespeople? Maybe we'll kick off with Jamie on this one. Jamie, why is it so hard, and why do people perceive that it's so hard to recruit good salespeople?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it's more than a perception. It is really difficult to find great salespeople, and I think there are several reasons. One is that great salespeople are typically working and winning, so you really do have to find them. And it takes great salespeople to find winning salespeople. So many organizations have the wrong people trying to find the right people, right? They don't really have salespeople who are specialized in this area and who are able to find the needle in the haystack, those really difficult people to find. And secondly, salespeople sell themselves in an interview. So the typical interview does not work for sales. We have to dig under the surface and so to speak, move into the operations department and move out of sales, get to the real stuff. And so the typical interview just doesn't work. And thirdly, working and winning sales, people are happy or content where they are typically. So it requires just a lot of effort. We really have to court these individuals and find what would help them upgrade their opportunity to take the next step somewhere. And so, compensation is not always the biggest motivator there, so we really have to get creative. So there's a number of reasons, but it is challenging. It's the hardest thing to find.
How about you, Craig? What do you see in this area? Why is it so hard to recruit good salespeople?
Well, I would agree with what Jamie just said. I think probably one of the biggest things is we're not strategic enough in our sourcing process. I think, the same old fishing pond, so to speak, to use an analogy, doesn't really work. And just finding someone from your competitor, to the point that was made, if they're still there, if they're any good, they're still there. And if something happens to the company, the good ones are going to find another place pretty quickly. So finding them is hard to do, and I don't think we're strategic enough. I don't think, and there's a whole, I can unpack that, but I want to get to the rest of the questions. But I think being strategic in the sourcing is really critical.
So what's your take, Kim? Why is it so hard, or is it a perception?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. Let me start by saying that I agree with what Jamie and Craig said, but I believe that all positions can be filled. So people who are listening who may say, gosh, this position is just impossible, I simply cannot fill it. The reality is that you can, but you have to take everything into consideration, including where we are right now with 4.7% unemployment. That number is even less among college-educated workers, so by definition, you've narrowed your pool of available salespeople. Geographic restrictions, so the minute you start restricting your recruiting geography when you have a high degree of specificity around skills and industry, then you start to narrow the candidate pool even more. So those are some kind of tactical things that you really have to ask yourself when you're saying, gee, this is just really hard or nearly impossible to find somebody for this role.
Okay, good. And moving on, maybe Craig, you want to start on this one. So do you need to take a different approach to hiring salespeople than other roles? I mean, is it a very, very different and very specific recruiting strategy that you need?
Well, I think in a word, absolutely. And the reason is because and you know, I'm the worst at this. My wife will tell you this. If you want to sell something, come to me, because I will buy from a good salesperson. Whether or not I need it or not, I'm going to buy it. And I think salespeople are good at selling, so they're good at persuading, and that's what they're taught to do. So the same old approach of the questions that might lead them, that might give them a kind of a hint of what you're looking for. They're really smart people. And, you know, I hate to say this, but there are some statistics out there that say that most people, not just salespeople, but most people lie in an interview. Well, unfortunately, what happens is salespeople are really good at persuading, and so it's hard to tell the truth sometimes. And so you've got to really find a different approach that allows them to show what it is they've got. If we've got the same questions and the same way we hire other roles, a lot of times we're going to miss the mark. And so I think finding the right, having the right profile, and a profile is not just have they been successful somewhere else and do they have the selling skills, but we're looking at behaviors. And I'll tell you what, John, that's the hardest thing, is to really look for sales behaviors. And I think that's why we need a different approach.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kim, what do you think on this? Because you're right. I mean, a salesperson who can't sell themselves in an interview, I mean, you know, can't sell anything if you can't sell yourself. But some people are very, very good at selling themselves and maybe not as good at selling the product. So what approach do you take to hiring?
Well, when I looked at these questions before the panel, I'm gonna assume something with my answer. I'm gonna assume that we've gotten to the point where we have found a salesperson who is strong, that your company has formulated questions that relate to, you know, is a truly consultative salesperson, which is what we know works in a B2B setting, and we can get into definitions when we talk about types of salespeople toward the end. But when you say, do you need to take a different approach, I'm going to ask everybody on the call to look internally. And I believe that sales hiring should mirror your sales process and the sales behaviors you expect from your current salespeople and yourself. So if you place a high degree of importance on preparation, research, and knowing your customer, then you sitting in the hiring chair, I see a lot of salespeople walk out of interviews unimpressed with the company where they've interviewed. And so what you need to say to yourself is, hey, this isn't all about us. This is about the person coming in the door. So if you truly do want to capture that excellent sales candidate, you need to also make sure that you've read their resume. I see situations like that where people, hey, you know, I sat down and the person hadn't read my resume. Review their LinkedIn profile. Look at their current company. Interactions with customers isn't one-sided, so your interviewing behavior when you're sitting in the hiring chair shouldn't be one-sided either. So I know it's a little bit different angle than what Craig talked about, but nevertheless, I think that when you're nearing a decision, you really, really need to mirror how you want your deals to close. Follow a disciplined process, make things happen quickly, but not too quickly, which we can talk about. Your candidates are judging you and your company as much as you're putting them under the lens of evaluation. Probably not the answer that I'm looking for in this one, but I just thought it was important to throw out there as we talk about taking a different approach.
Yeah, no, this is great, Kim. Yeah, I think it's a good lesson. I think you know, a lot of us probably don't do sufficient preparation in advance for interviewing, and you're correct. I mean, if you're looking to hire the best salespeople, you probably want to be good at selling your company to them as well. What's your take on this, Jamie? What do you think about does recruiting sales take a completely different approach or a slightly different approach to other roles?
I do think it does, absolutely. And I agree with both what Craig and Kim shared. What Craig shared in regard to, you know, the characteristics and qualities and behaviors, things like that, I would align my answer with that, in that great sales success is really a factor of both the mindset and the skill set, and then the tool set that they get once they're there. But when you're interviewing for sales individuals, you're really looking at mindset and skill set. And a big piece of that success is mindset. So these are characteristics and qualities that aren't just based on skill. And they're things that it's very hard to get to in an interview. So, you know, we have an in-depth hour-and-a-half behavioral interview and then simulation evaluation to really get to the heart and under the surface for sales individuals. And I think it's important. You have to have so much more of an in-depth process. And I agree with Kim as well that you've got to sell yourself and your company. So it's you know, it's really a two-pronged approach. And as well, I think a lot of companies rely on sort of the post and pray method, and that's really attracting the under 5% of the unemployed market. So that's not typically what you want for sales, and because typically there's a reason that they're unemployed, which was they didn't hit quota. So also, to find top salespeople, you have to go where top salespeople go. Where are they online looking for leads or business acumen, like Selling Power or Hoover? So you have to have a really customized recruiting strategy depending on your role, and think about where are these people out in the market, what types of networking events or trade shows, what types of publications are they reading. And then, like I mentioned, you have to, for sales, to have such an in-depth behavioral interview and simulation evaluation. That's part of the qualification process, and that just is a much more in-depth process than a typical approach to other roles. So I absolutely think it needs to be a different approach.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, let's move on to question number 3, and maybe Kim, you want to kick this one off. So what are some of the traits or characteristics that will, for you, predict or a leading indicator that this person is going to be a great sales hire?
Well, Jamie has talked a lot about attitudes and attributes and how previous success isn't necessarily a predictor of future success. However, some of the traits that I look for are, and I'll tell you, this is a candidate recently aced this with a CEO, and they were talking about a new product launch. It had come out of beta. It was in great shape, but they had absolutely no marketing set up or anything. The candidate said, you know, basically I did it all. Like I rolled up my sleeves, and you know, the question was, if I told you you had to sell something without any budget, could you do it? And the candidate said, yes, and I've done that, and went on to tell a very good story about how he was able to completely, from scratch, market a product, get it out into the market, and actually have some pretty clear wins. So attitude and attributes are super important. However, having said that, I think it is truly important from the standpoint of looking at past success that someone come to an interview with the ability to clearly articulate previous success, their willingness to talk about deals sold. And I know some people fall into, well, you know, it's confidential and, you know, I really can't talk about that. Well, you know, unless you're selling with a top secret clearance to the federal government, and it really isn't. And ability to walk someone through the steps and process that was taken to ensure a clear win, how they got the lead from concept to close, basically. and being able to do so in very, very clear terms. Those are some of the traits and characteristics that I absolutely look for when I'm interviewing people.
Yeah, I love that, Kim, because one of my pet peeves in interviewing, and it's not just salespeople, but it's when you ask something like that about prior experiences or whatever, and you get kind of a vague answer as opposed to here's exactly what I did and what role I played in it, and how I really moved this forward. I find a lot of people tend to be very vague, and that's frustrating. So yeah, I think that's a critical piece. Um, how about you, Craig? What about some of the traits or characteristics that will tell you that somebody's going to be a great sales hire?
Well, I, my take on this, John, is that there's really not, and we know this, right? There's really not a single list of skills and traits that apply to every position. So we understand that. So I think the first step we've got to take is what causes, as us as a company, what causes our customers to buy from us? What do our people have that gets our customers to buy from us? Let's define that, because selling a complex software product that has an 18-month sales cycle is different than selling a piece of office equipment that may have a 2-month sales cycle, so to speak. So there's different skill set, and I think that's really important to define, and I think all of us on this panel would agree. There are skills, and you can train the skills, but there are also traits or characteristics or behaviors or mindset or whatever term we want to use that are innate. They're inside of them, and they're very difficult to train. I can teach. It's funny, my kids quote unquote claim they know how to make a bed. I showed them how to make a bed. They can make a bed, but if you go to the room, you'd find out, these kids don't know how to make a bed. They're not demonstrating the characteristics or traits of making a bed. And so they might have the skill and be able to prove it, but the ongoing characteristics. So I think it's different for a different role, and I would encourage all those on the call to think about, for our organization and our sales cycle, what are the key traits? And one of them was said, and I think it's really critical in this mindset, and it can be unpacked in multiple ways, but it's this whole consultative mindset. That means I'm going to consult with this customer. I'm going to understand what it is they're looking for. I'm going to ask more questions than I give answers. I'm going to have them speak more than I speak, all that kind of stuff. And so in the hiring process, we want to model that. And both Kim and Jamie have said this, but we want to model that in the process. So I think understanding what those characteristics are is really key. So defining them for your organization, and then developing an interview question or set of questions that are open-ended that get to that characteristic. Let's not lead them. Let's let them sell us on this, and be able to persuade us of that characteristic. Not giving them any hints, but giving them an idea to really give us a perspective from their background.
Great, thanks, Craig. Okay, Jamie, what are a couple of things that stand out for you when you're looking at someone that you think, okay, this person's going to be great, I know it?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about that, because this is really a critical piece of the whole process. I absolutely agree that past performance indicates future performance, which is why we're such a proponent of the behavioral interview. And like you said, earlier, Craig, just having that open-ended question. And so our whole behavioral interview, though, I also agree it has to be customized based on that specific position, that specific company. And so it has to be customized based on the profile you're looking at. But for me, I believe a winning salesperson has both the right mindset and the skill set. So the whole qualification process needs to include elements of both. Success for sales is about 80% mindset and 20% skill set. So mindset components that we look into are things like self-discipline, optimism, desire to really impact others, resourcefulness, initiative, persistence, communication, accountability, things that are innate, like we just talked about. But yes, so asking behavioral-based, open-ended questions, which that whole theory is based on past performance indicates future performance. Now, the skill set components, one of the biggest indicators for me is sales success track record. Can they communicate a replicatable formula for success, their metrics for success that cause them to win in their current position? And can they talk about specific client scenarios? And like Kim just mentioned, I think that's critical. The sales success track record, the formula for success, think of a marathon runner. Say they had their best time, but they can't tell you how they trained or how they got there, they're probably not going to do it again. If someone can articulate exactly what it takes for them to win, here's what winning looks like, and from sourcing leads to appointment dials to getting appointments to closing ratios can say, this is what I have to do to win, then it's more likely they can come to your organization and replicate that. So that's really important. They know how they got there. And then, just a value-based sales assessment to see how they sell. Do they sell on value? And the ability to get an appointment at a high level, the ability to overcome objections, their sales drive and motivation, and do they have those top performer characteristics? And looking as well at their compensation history and how they maximize their opportunities there, I think are really critical components and some of the most important things to look at overall. But it's a combination of, there's a mindset piece and a skill set piece.
Yeah, I always like that, the idea that there are people who are consciously competent and then there are people who are unconsciously competent. And you really want to find the people who actually know why they're successful, as opposed to the people who really don't know how they're successful. And in the company that Kim, who recruited me into Huthwaite, based on the work of Neil Rackham, who was all about really defining the traits and skills of top performing salespeople, because sometimes people just don't know what they do correctly. All right, Kim, let's flip this over and let's talk about when you're in the process of looking for a good sales hire. What are some of the red flags that pop up that warn you that this person may not be the right fit?
I think one of the most obvious things is job hopping. With a few caveats, however, just because we have gone through some interesting times with our financial downturn that really kicked into high gear in 2009. So that, really digging into if someone was laid off during 9, 10, 11, 12, there could have been mass layoffs. At the same time, there have been certain periods where it would be pretty difficult to lose a job or leave, or leaving for reasons that just kind of don't necessarily stand up to strict scrutiny. So looking at job hopping, but then also looking at, can someone hang in there through thick and thin with a company through really tough times, and getting them to be able to describe, what was a really tough time that not only you went through, but that your company went through. And if they just cannot come up with an answer, if the attitude and attributes of just gutting out some of the tough times aren't there, I really do see that as a red flag with a salesperson, because sales is not easy. Yeah. And being able to just really demonstrate, hey, I went through this incredibly difficult time in my company. There was a lot of turnover. We had a really poor product launch, versus someone who makes up a lot of excuses and just, kind of when the going gets tough, they leave. Because, as I said, sales is not easy. Some other red flags, just kind of tactically, you should expect good behavior through an interview process. You should expect a well-written follow-up email. You should expect that people come in having researched your company. You should expect all of the things that you want your salespeople to deliver on for your customers. Your candidates should deliver that when they come to the interviews with your company. And if they don't, that's a red flag.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's a critical one. It's amazing sometimes, you go through a great interview with somebody and, their follow-up is almost instantaneous and you're like, this is great, this is what we want. And then you have the other person who was, great in the interview too, and then you hear from them 3 days later. And you're like, right. Okay, well, that follow-up doesn't seem so great. How about you, Craig? What about some of the red flags that pop up for you?
Well, I mean, this to me is the other side of the coin of the previous one about the traits and characteristics. And I would agree that, if they're disparaging the old company or they start talking bad about the previous boss, I mean, that's a red flag because they're just to the point that was made. They're basically talking about the past and more than likely making excuses. I'll tell you the other one that a lot of our customers look for is because it's a business-to-business sale, and because it's a longer sales cycle, and because they have to develop trust and credibility pretty quickly with multiple people in an organization, the ability to listen or not listen is a red flag. And you can know that, you can tell that they're not listening by the questions they ask. They're just waiting for the next question because they got their list of questions to ask. The good ones will actually pick up on your answer and try to get you to talk more. And you want those kind, because that's how, ideally, they'll be working with their customers. So I think those are two of them. But the other big one that I think is a little obvious to people, but we might miss, is, and you said it in a different way on this, John, I claim a sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. And that is, there's got, I don't mean pushy, I mean assertive, not overly aggressive, but a sense of urgency that something's got to get done, because the companies that these guys are working for are not sitting around going, we'll take our time and wait till you can sell something and we'll be okay. Just take a couple of years to get used to it. No, they take a lot of quarterly based companies. They're driven on the quarterly basis because they're publicly traded, and so the expectation is greater than it's ever been that they come in and they hit the ground running. So a sense of urgency is a key red flag that if you see it the way you just described it, they're not following up, or this doesn't seem to be a big deal to them, then you might want to think about whether or not to hire them.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, the sense of urgency. So you want somebody who is focused on closing at some stage, or at least laying the groundwork for the close. I like that. How about you, Jamie? What are some of the red flags that pop up for you?
I would say a couple of things. One, going back to what I said prior, if they don't know their formula for success, they can't communicate clearly how they win, then I would assume they just got lucky and consider that a red flag. Because they don't, also I would consider that means they don't really own their success. And then also, I think if they have a lack of consistent superstar sales results. So, you're not going to win every time. And I love what Kim said about knowing, just being able to talk about a hard time and how they overcame that. I think that's really great. But if they don't have consistent success within their roles, right, they haven't achieved the goals before them and they have a lot of excuses, that would be a red flag. One other thing I really like to look at within people is asking them some areas for development. I don't mean the typical strength and weakness question, but what are the things that they struggle with? And I used to always say that at Career Builder, when I had, salespeople nationally, I thought the leaders, a good leader and a good salesperson, the salesperson will always be able to say, here are one or two things that I could do differently that would make me even better. And a good leader makes sure that their salespeople know that. I mean, they know what they do really well, and they know their biggest development area that would help them grow. And it's usually the weakness is usually the other side of their strength magnified. But I think people who are humble and know they have some areas of growth and development, or, like we talked about, that could talk about a struggle, are good people. They've built some character. So if they can't do that and they're not, that would be a red flag for me. And I agree with Craig too. I mean, too much, not listening well is a huge one. So sometimes when you ask a question and they just keep talking and talking and talking, they're just overselling themselves. And I consider that a red flag.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think the talking too much is a great indicator that they're not good listeners, and that there could be issues when they're in front of a customer. So maybe Craig, you kick off this one. What are some of the things that attract a salesperson to a new opportunity? I mean, obviously earning potential is one of them, but what are some of the others? Because as all of you guys said at the beginning, the best salespeople are generally employed and not particularly looking. So what would attract them to a new opportunity?
Well, I got a couple of them, because I know Jamie and Kim will add as well. But this earning potential is the obvious. I get that. And quite frankly, I grew up in the world where I did not have the best product. I did not have the best software product when I first started selling. And so I had to learn how to sell around that. So while I want to say product is a real key, and I think a lot of people think that, I don't look at that, because if they got a really good product, they think the product can sell themselves. Why do you need them? I know that's an extreme comment, but some of the things that attract them, though, first of all, is leadership. The leadership team, the vision, the culture, the stuff that goes on that's from the top down is really, really critical. And so their job, just like our job on hiring them is critical, their job on being hired to see, tell me a little bit about the culture, tell me about the organization, tell me about the leadership. I think it's really good. So those on the call hiring people, you're going to have, there's two things going on. You're buying them, and you're selling your company, you and your company, and they're buying you and they're selling them and themselves. So I think the leadership is the key piece of this. The second piece of this is the support for the sale. Okay, so what I mean is the ability for someone to be able to, provide them leads, to be able to help them support in the sales process. If it's the redheaded stepchild, then sales is one of my customers says, sales eats first, right? And that's a little old school, but the point is that this is a sales-driven organization, and so we want people to support the sales team. So I think technical support is another key piece to that.
Excellent. How about you, Kim? What are, because I know, you go in and you try to find, obviously, the best people, and generally they're employed. So how do you attract them to a new opportunity?
So I think being able to answer the why your company, why this career opportunity, why them, and I get that question from candidates, like, okay, so why did you pick me out? And it really is my job to be able to articulate to them, here's why I reached out to you. And to Jamie's point, we are in an environment where you don't post and pray. You have to go and find people. And I can talk to you about some statistics that we've done some work at the Sales Zone, sort of studying our last 100 placements and where they come from. But some other things, piggybacking off of what Jamie said, are you well differentiated from your competition, and can you articulate that in an interview? Is your environment warm and engaging during the interview process? Do you make people feel like, hey, I could really come to work in this organization? And then tactically, do you follow up with your candidates in a timely manner? We talked about sense of urgency. Jamie brought that up, or rather Craig brought that up. Whether it's you or someone on your HR team, really don't let gaps in communication create the impression that you're not interested. All those little things add up to being able to attract salespeople to a new opportunity. Being able to articulate your process. If you move too fast, maybe it looks like you're desperate. If you move too slowly, you have an inability to execute, maybe some lack of discipline going on in your process. And so, again, it goes back to attracting people to an overall environment where you can sell the company, you can sell the opportunity, you can stay focused on a message that will enable your candidates to see a true path to success, both financially as well as kind of intrinsic motivators as well. So I know Jamie's going to add to the list, but those are some of the top things that seem to bubble up when we're interviewing candidates.
That's great. Jamie, so you go ahead, add to the list.
Well, I think that's a great list. I think that is well encompassing most things. I would just add a few things that, and it's not necessarily adding, but just a different way to think about it. Truly, statistically, most salespeople don't leave their jobs for an opportunity necessarily just to make more money. That is one of the attractions, but the number one reason that salespeople leave their jobs is, unfortunately, their boss. And so that just goes to show how much culture and leadership are such a big component of things that attract salespeople to a new opportunity. And I think it's important to remember that what's the culture within the organization, and that is a big attraction. So we'll interview top performers within the organization currently to learn not just about their background, but also about the culture of the company, so we can talk with people and attract people based on that. And then I think I like really what Craig said as well about the support around that salesperson. can the team really deliver what they're selling? Can they feel confident that what they sell will be the experience that the customer has? And also, one of the things I just think it's important to remember as well is, because Craig, you mentioned this in terms of, is it the brand selling or is it the salesperson selling? So, it's great to have a great brand, but some people are working within sales organization where it's really marketing driven and the brand is super critical. Some are low price leaders, and then some are value players. And I think salespeople really want to be value players, because then they're the ones that make the difference. They're the lifeblood of the organization, really creating relationships and selling on value. So that's also an attraction to top salespeople.
Excellent, thank you. No, those are superb lists. I think everybody will get a lot of value out of listening to those. So, Kim, obviously, like everybody else on the call today, you've been doing this for a while. What changes have you seen over the last number of years, if any, in sales recruiting?
Well, it has evolved, and I think it is ever evolving. So I'm going to use kind of a television analogy. Years ago, I'll date myself, what the heck, we all used to watch a few stations on television, maybe some cable news. Now everybody is so dispersed in terms of how they consume content, whether they're online in front of one of 800 television channels, or they're getting all of their news on Facebook, or all of their entertainment on Facebook. I think recruiting has gone in that direction as well. But I'll share some statistics from our company. So we looked at the last 100 placements that we made, and these are, whether rank and file salespeople to senior executives and everything in between. 51% of the candidates who received offers were pursued in some way by us. We initiated contact with them. They did not seek us out. So we've talked a lot about that, but I think putting some data and some statistics and some numbers to it is very important. So for the listeners who are going it alone, truly, if you have internal HR who is simply posting jobs either on LinkedIn or on your website, which probably crawls to Indeed, which is a meta site, and some other places, that simply isn't enough. When we look at the last 100 placements that we've made, only 6% of people receiving offers sought us out through those means. So while all those tools are important, it's how those tools are leveraged. And I would say that that's one of the biggest evolutions in sales recruiting, is that we have to cast a very wide net, and we have to be everywhere. Jamie kind of talked about that at the top of the call. Going and finding where those people hang out, either physically or online, is crucial to your recruiting process.
Excellent. How about you, Jamie? Has sales recruiting changed that much in the last few years for you?
I would agree with Kim. I think that it's not that I don't think it's changed overall in a major way, other than a lot of it today does happen on social media, and also the market switches back and forth between being an employee market or an employer-driven market, and today it's an employee market. I mean, top salespeople are harder to find. So what has evolved, and I think you said it very well, Kim, that's an evolution. What has evolved is that we just have to be much more creative to attract these individuals. It takes specialization in sales. In the past, I think people could just use a general recruiting partner or HR, and maybe they were easier to find. There weren't so many methods. Now people feel like, yeah, there are a lot of online tools, but it does attract masses. And so to get to the really quality people that are working and winning and doing well and hitting quota takes a lot of work. And like I said before, I think it takes great salespeople to find great salespeople. So it doesn't really work the same way as a lot of other areas of a business. So HR, contacting a salesperson, we did an example and sort of a study when I was at Career Builder, and it was funny because I was leading the training and development class with all the new employees, and there was a new salesperson in there, and our HR department had contacted that person maybe 6 weeks ago, and 6 weeks prior, and then had called that person again that day. They didn't even know they worked there yet. But the sales leader called themselves to try to recruit that person. And then they worked, with the company and accepted an opportunity there within a couple of weeks. So salespeople want to talk to sales-oriented people. That's why companies like ours exist, those of us, on the panel, because we're salespeople helping to work within the sales area. We get it, and it's just different. They want to talk with people that get what they do. So I do think that has shifted.
Excellent. How about you, Craig? What changes have you seen?
Well, I want to delineate this because I can't add much to what Jamie and Kim said, but unfortunately, I don't think sales recruiting has changed much in the last few years. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Not from like what Jamie and Kim do. I think because I think of them as helping you find the recruits, if you will, and then helping you get them employed within the company. I think what hasn't changed is inside the organization going out. I don't think recruiting has changed a whole lot. Unfortunately, we're asking the same old tired questions. And we mentioned HR, and some HR teams, a lot of times their job is to get a position, just to get someone in front of you. And so I think what hasn't changed is our ability to really be prepared and do subjective assessments of the candidates, not the gut feel, which, again, I explained that. I confessed earlier on this call, this webinar, that's the way I buy. I buy from my gut, and I've made some mistakes as a sales leader. And so I think the real key is we got to make sure that it hasn't changed. Let's add some more objectivity to what has tended to be more subjective in the past.
Excellent. Okay, and this is the final question. Of this, and this could probably be a discussion all of its own. But Jamie, why don't you kick this one off? Has the type of salesperson who succeeds changed at all in the past few years? I mean, we've seen a lot about new sales approaches, new sales methodologies, all of this kind of thing that have come out. But has the type of salesperson who succeeds changed, do you think?
I don't believe it has. I really think, when I think about top salespeople, they have that it factor, and it's hard to qualify, but it's that grit, it's that no limit thinking, that commitment to success, that I'm going to win no matter what, and I don't think that's changed. I do think salespeople today have to sell a little bit differently. There's just there's different sales structures now within organizations. There's some inside efforts that then help on the outside. There's sales organizations that were outside now moving to more of an inside approach. People are having to incorporate the social media into their process and things like that. But I don't think the type of salesperson who succeeds has changed.
What about you, Kim?
I think it has evolved. I think that because buyer behavior has changed, and we know this just from reading marketing data and analytics, that buyers are so much more educated than they were maybe 15 or 20 years ago because there's so much data and information available on the internet for people to study before they've made half their buying decision when you walk in the door. So as a result, I do think that everything Jamie said is absolutely accurate, as well as Craig, but I think the evolution in the sales behavior has evolved. And what I mean by that is they've become what is a truly consultative salesperson, somebody who is very self-aware, but also very aware of their customer's best interests, and what their customer knows when the salesperson walks in the door. So being able to get out in front of that buying decision and being highly, highly consultative and highly, highly anticipatory in terms of understanding where that buyer is potentially in their buying cycle. And that's tricky. But I do think that that the type of salesperson who is truly successful has had to evolve.
Yeah, and finally, Craig, what's your take on this?
Well, it's slightly similar, but slightly different. I look at it this way. So I'd ask the folks who are listening, has your customer changed at all in the past few years about how they buy? Because what has to happen is a customer, because the answer to that, I believe, is yes. Because here's what's happened, and Jamie just said one of them. They're smarter than they've ever been because they have access to information. Then they know more about you before you walk in the door, because they can go out there and go on and Google it and look at information, go on LinkedIn. If they're smart, they're going to go find out about you. They're going to go find out about the company. So the customers are smarter. Procurement has more power than it's ever had before. They really, a lot of my customers, a lot of the work we do is helping them figure out how to sell with procurement involved. It's an added layer. They want to go to the business people who are actually buying it, but the salespeople now have to deal with procurement, who they're all about the price, putting them on a spreadsheet. Some people call it column fodder. They just got to be able to have someone to compare it to, and so that's more difficult. The third thing is they're having to get up and over in an organization where they've never been before. So they have to go meet with certain levels of people, call it executive, call it whatever you want, but they're having to meet with people that are not the traditional people they've had to sell to, and the products are getting commoditized. So they're going to really have to figure out a way to differentiate right off the bat, right when they walk in the door. If they look like their competitor when they walk in the door and they start asking the same questions, the customer's going to put them in that box and say, okay, you're just like everyone else. So the last thing that I believe makes it difficult and more important for them to be able to succeed now than ever before is the customers truly want to collaborate with the company. And the salesperson is the tip of the spear, so to speak, on this. And so they're looking to, and someone said it here, they're looking for a organization to help them articulate the value of what it is that they do. Not the benefits, not the features, but what does it mean? How does it help me increase, reduce, improve, whatever it's revenue or cost or customer experience or whatever. And that, I believe, is the type of person, that's a different person than several years ago, who was basically going in there and had a great relationship and was relying on that relationship to continue the sale.
Yeah, I would agree. And the only thing I would add is agree totally with everybody. I think business acumen is huge now. I think in the past, a lot of salespeople got away without really understanding the business of business. I don't think you can do that anymore. To your point, I think if you're going to have a value conversation, you need to be able to understand the value that your product or service can bring to the business that you're selling to help with them with their business issues. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the session. We have a couple of questions, though, from the audience. So I'd like to ask these, and anybody who wants to, from the panel who wants to answer it, just speak up. The first one is, how would you vary the selection process when you're hiring a veteran salesperson versus someone making a career change or transition from sales or to sales from non-sales? So how would you vary the selection process between hiring a veteran salesperson or hiring somebody making a career change from non-sales to sales?
This is Jamie. I'll jump in. If it's someone, going from non-sales to sales, obviously that has to be a profile that is okay with the company, but same approach in terms of behavioral-based interviewing where past performance indicates future performance, but you just have to take other parts of their life and examples within those. So each interview has to be customized for the position and based on things like that. So someone with a lot of sales experience, they're going to have more stories to tell about their formula for success and examples of client scenarios and things like that. Someone who doesn't have that, it's going to be more, it's going to be examples of things from other positions that we're going to have to pull and see, do they have those innate characteristics and qualities within other scenarios? Do they have that it factor, that grit within other areas? So it's going to be, again, open-ended questions, but they're going to be about life or other positions, not necessarily sales related, to assess. And then because I think mindset's a huge piece, that can be assessed regardless of if they've been someone who's been in sales for a long time.
Excellent. Okay, anyone else want to add anything quickly? Or?
Yeah, I'll just add real quick on that. I think the short answer, the difference is it's a different profile. If it's the same job, it's the same profile. But I think the behavior aspect, it's the same. You're looking for a set of behaviors, and either one's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to get in the guy that's a veteran because he's going to try to sell you on it. It's going to be hard because the guy's moving from non-sales into sales, and you're going to have to dig on it. But the questions around behaviors and innate, you can teach them, you can train them on skills. The skills you can train. You cannot train them on those innate behaviors, and that's where I think you need to land on and be consistent. This is the behavior we're looking for, and then recruit and hire and interview to that.
Okay, so next we have a three-part question. So I'll answer the first part. Can I get a recording of this seminar? Of course, that will be available to everybody. Second, where can I find resources that can help me creatively compensate quality job seekers if your company has a very small budget? Anyone want to take that one?
All right, is the question about hiring salespeople, or is the question about finding recruiters?
No, this is about recruiting a salesperson. When you have a very small budget, how do you creatively compensate?
Oh.
Mm.
Well.
You mean compensate the salesperson or the tool itself?
The salesperson.
Well, I mean, the variable compensation versus the base compensation just is going to be higher on the variable side, which honestly is typical for truly value-based selling positions. The variable compensation is the bigger opportunity, and someone who believes in their success can do that. But you just have to remember, you don't want people who have earned a whole lot more. Yeah. They're not going to A, want it, and B, so this has to be an upgrade for someone's career. So you have to adjust your profile a little bit to fit that right person.
Yeah.
John, this is another option, if there truly are budget constraints, is to look at either independent contractors or dealerships, or depending on the solution or the product. I actually interviewed someone to that question about creating something out of nothing. He had no budget to hire new salespeople, but yet he had, frankly, a bogey to hit, and he cast a very wide net for independent consultants who do independent selling, and was actually able to be successful with that strategy. So if you simply do not have budget for hiring and you can't pay commissions, look at another structure, a straight commission strategy. And the way to do that might be hiring an independent consultant.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, and I think that's becoming more of a trend now. I think there's even some organizations who will find and hire our independent people for you. So here's another one. Do you find any correlation in the success of a salesperson? Do you find any of it is dependent on whether they're an extrovert or an introvert, or does it make a difference?
It doesn't make a difference.
Nope.
Oh, there you go, clear answers. It doesn't make a difference. Why?
Well, I would say the same thing, that does it make a difference for a leader to be an introvert or an extrovert? If you look at some of the best leaders, if you go back to the Jim Collins stuff on the level 5 leader, some of the best leaders are introverts. They just got an intense will with this personal humility. So, and I would be one who would be a borderline introvert. I'm a very process-oriented person, but very successful at sales. The way I go about it is a very methodical, process-oriented way, but I'm still successful. So extroverts have a gift of gab a lot of times, and they'll have the ability, that comes with their set of challenges, right? Because then they might be the ones who talk too much and don't listen enough. I might be the one that might listen too much and not talk enough, right? So either way, you're going to have a challenge, but I don't think it matters.
Okay, last question from the audience, and then I want to give them a chance to find out how they can contact you guys. Can any of you recommend a validated tool that can be used during the interview selection process that will predict success for a sales role? I'll just give you my opinion on tools, okay? There are lots of tools out there, and I think there are probably tools that you can use. I think you have to use tools as just one small data point. I think the process that the guys on the panel have outlined about using professionals like them to find the right profile of person, I really think that's the way to go. I certainly think you can use it. You can use a tool, but it's only one small data point. I found myself in the past, I've been put through tests in the past, and sometimes results have come out completely not who I am, or my focus. So I would just always be careful of tools, and I think using professionals like we have on the panel is a better way to go, because I think a tool can just give you, it's a data point, but nothing more than that. I don't know. Do you guys agree? Disagree?
I do. I totally agree. It's a data point. It's interesting. It's something to dig deeper into. I would not ever say it's a black or white. It takes a customized behavioral-based interview with a person. And even then, we all make hiring mistakes and don't know it until later. I mean, it's just, there's nothing that's 100%.
John, I read somewhere that assessments, in fact, I'm not going to name the assessment organization, but it's on their website, that they help improve sales hiring by up to 35%. So that goes to what you said, which it truly is just one data point. The other thing is, so often, and we run into this all the time in our practice, people do want that kind of bottom line for me, and the reality is that a test it's not a tarot card, and I think that's a crutch if an organization is utilizing it. Well, the test said not to hire, or that there was this area where they asked us to kind of look into a few things in the individual's personality, and it wasn't the way I wanted it to look, so I went in another direction. That you need a customized process, as Jamie said, to your organization, and you will start to see results.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely start to see results. If you have a replicatable hiring process with customized behavioral questions, with each hire, you will start to see who answers those questions, who develops deeper answers, who really illustrates those sales behaviors, that attitude, those attributes, the grit that Jamie was talking about. I'm all behind I stand foursquare behind a really strong process with really excellent behavioral interviewing questions.
All right, thank you. Okay, well, we're slightly over the time now, so before we go, I'd like each of you, maybe starting with you, Kim, tell the audience how they can contact you. We'll also put this information with the recording, obviously, but if you want to just quickly tell people how they can contact you.
My email address is on our website, thesaleszone.com, and my email is very simple. It's Kim Cole, KIMCOLE, @thesaleszone.com.
Perfect. And you, Craig?
It's C. Jones. The C is for Craig. C. Jones @performancemethods.com.
Excellent. And finally, Jamie?
Mine is J. Crosby, CROSB as in boy, IE, @proactivate.net. Proactivate, ATE at the end, .net. And my phone number is 214-763-2342.
Excellent. Well, listen, I'd like to thank all three of you today. This has been fascinating, and as I saw, as you can see, and we could probably go on for another hour here. This is such a great topic area. This recording is going to be available to everybody who attended today, plus those who registered and couldn't attend. Plus, it will be on our online magazine, SalesPOP, in the next few days as well. So again, I'd like to thank everybody who attended today, and I'd like to especially thank Jamie, Craig, and Kim for being excellent panelists. Again, my name is John Golden of Pipeliner Sales, pipelinersales.com, and we look forward to joining us on another panel discussion very soon. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.